Hello, 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 everyone. Got the regulars B, Afton, Quokka, Sam, Roche, Silvera, Mouse, Dan, Alex, this other Dan, but I also saw there were some new folks in here. I saw Isabel say that it was her first live chats, so welcome in. Glad you're finally catching one. Hi 748 didn't seem to know who I was, so that's cool. Pearl Queen, welcome in, welcome in. My name is Evan. I am an entomologist, which means I work with insects. And on Wednesday nights, we use the phenomenal cameras here at Alveus Sanctuary to look around the pasture and some of the other enclosures and just talk about what we see. And if we're not really seeing much, which is the case in the winter, that's fine too. I'm happy to answer any and all other bug questions that you may have. But hello, everyone. Siesta, Emilius, Court, Kit Cinnamon, Posh, Stork, Decabee, first time chat. Hello. Phoenix, Logan, Shreds, Cloudy World, another Dan, J7 hasn't seen me in 13 minutes. Welcome, everyone. And we hit it off well here. Our first bug immediately. Who can tell me? Who can tell me who this is? Spider. Yes. Wolfie. And Grandaflar, that's your mom. Interesting. Yes. Everyone who is saying wolf spider has clearly learned a thing or two from chats past. Wolf spiders are probably the most common spider that we come across here when we're doing this. And this one is giving us a very good demonstration of one of the very easy characteristics that we're able to see even in the IR. I guess especially with the IR, is those two big glowing eyes. So wolf spiders generally will have 8 eyes, but the 2 middle eyes on the back row will be very greatly enlarged. And wolf spiders, because they're visual predators that hunt at night, have a special lens in the back of their eye called the tapetum lucidum, which is the same structure that gives like cat eyes their glow at night. And with our lights here, and with just like a normal flashlight or something like that, you can see the shine of wolf spider eyes a lot of the time. And so they're not super in focus, but yeah, you can see those 2 big glowing orbs right on top. Those are going to be the 2 very large forward-facing eyes of this wolf spider. I did see another really good guess of a grass spider. That was Everyday Italian. Welcome in. Thank you for being here. Grass spiders will have much longer spinnerets. So spinnerets are the little finger bits that come off of the tip of the abdomen that actually help to lay silk down. And grass spiders will have a longer set than wolf spiders do. Wolf spiders kind of curl up against the body, and grass spiders will have longer ones that are usually very visible and sticking straight out. So that's another really good guess. That's another common type of spider that we would get here. But this one, in fact, is just a wolf spider. Oh, Winnie was doing something. Winnie sounds. I missed some Winnie noises. I've got stream muted, so I don't know what Winnie was doing, but she's all good, I hope. Channel Gray, yes, you can. So this is an activity that oh, Momtomology is here. Hello, mother. This is an activity that I've done when I've done night hikes and night insect collecting. I call it spider sniffing. And if you put a flashlight or some other light source, headlamp or whatever, right on your nose and look around, that is like the perfect angle to get the reflection of the light back that you're able to see it. So you're not actually sniffing out the spiders. Your nose isn't going to pick them up on their smells. But if you put the light right at your nose level and look around, you're able to see the spider eyes glowing. It's not quite as stable as that. I think it's very pretty. It twinkles a lot more. So you see, it's like very shimmery and shiny when you see it in person. But yes, you can see it on wolf spiders and a few other types of spiders. Not all spiders will have that tapetum lucidum or that special lens in the back of their eye. But wolf spiders are pretty ubiquitous and very, very common all across the US and frankly all across the world. So if you go out and do that, you will almost certainly be able to find wolf spiders. And if you do go out and do that, post it in the bug cord. We've got an Alveus Bug Appreciators Discord, ! Bug cord to get in there. And yeah, you can post that stuff throughout the week, and it'd be cool to see if you guys are actually able to make spider sniffing work. Leg to body ratio so insane on wolf spiders. They're active, so that's a big part of it. Physiology and like why things look the way they do can often, but not always, be informed by behavior. And so there are certain things you can learn from having like an insect specimen, but there's a lot you can also learn by observing insects in the wild and what they're actually doing. So wolf spiders, like I said, with their big eyes that glow like that, they're active nocturnal predators. And so to be able to run down crickets and beetles and whatever other prey items that they're after, they need to have pretty long legs to be able to scuttle and scurry pretty quick. And they will also somewhat use them raptorially. Raptorial legs on an insect, you think about like praying mantises and stuff like that. Raptorial just means like grabbing types of legs. Some wolf spiders will have thickened front legs where they will run up to their prey item and then kind of jump over it and put their two front legs in front of it to be able to hold that prey item while they're starting to feed on it. So they're leggy for a couple reasons, but mostly I think it has to do with helping them hunt. With things like tarantulas that aren't as active of predators, their bodies are a lot bigger. They've got very long legs because they're big spiders, but their bodies are a lot bigger. But if you think about something like an orb weaver, I see Sam was just mentioning that at the state fair. Oh, introducing kids to bug propaganda. Absolutely fantastic, Sam. We love that. Orb weavers have real big fat bodies and very skinny and usually very small legs. And that's because they do all of their hunting up in the web. Orb weaver spiders on the ground are not very graceful at all. They've got very big abdomens, so it kind of drags around. They're not fast. They're not going anywhere quickly. But when they're up in the web, they're perfectly designed for that. So, again, based on behavior and what they're made to do, quote unquote, you can tell a little bit about like why their bodies sort of look like that. Orb weavers definitely don't do well on the ground. They're not very leggy. They've got that really big booty to drag around, but they're more than comfortable up in the webs. Goth, yes, hello. I may have missed you during introductions, but yes, they do. Tarantula eyes are not good. Wolf spiders, jumping spiders have very acute vision. Jumping spiders are also some of the only spiders that we know that actually can see in color. But tarantulas hunt more often based on sense, and they will lay down like trip lines so they can feel the vibrations of prey approaching their burrow and things like that. So their eyesight is not very good. They've got very tiny eyes, and yes, they're kind of placed. They're forward a little bit, but they're definitely more up on top of the head than the wolf spiders, which have them more directed forward. And you see that eye placement in other animals too. Generally, prey items will have, or prey animals, things that tend to get preyed upon, will have eyes to the side that help them see predators coming from a longer ways away, while predatory animals will have eyes in the front because they've got better binocular vision in front of them to be able to track down their prey items. The way that I've always remembered that, and it's something that I learned as a kid, it was probably like 20 years ago when I first heard this, is eyes in the front, made to hunt, eyes to the side, made to hide. And so that little rhyme has stuck with me for all these years and helps me remember that if an animal has front-facing eyes, so think about Awa and Aquila, think about lions and tigers and all those big, scary predator animals, their eyes are in the front because they hunt down and track other animals as prey items. But if you think about deer, and you think about Winnie, and you think about some of these other, like, what would be natural prey animals, their eyes are off to the side because they're able to have a wider field of vision to detect predators coming up on them, and basically try to avoid being eaten. So eyes to the side, made to hide, eyes in the front, made to hunt. And it doesn't stay fully true with insects. Insects in general will have big, they call them bug eyes for a reason. But there are modifications. Like among spiders, wolf spiders do have very, very large front eyes compared to like an orb weaver, which has generally very small eyes all around. Abon Live, yeah, they are fast when they do choose to spend that energy. So they're able to sense the prey item, and they don't do a lot of work up until that point, but when they do have a prey item run across their little trip liner, they feel the vibrations, they go super fast because in the wild, who knows when that next prey item is going to walk by your little tunnel. So they do put a lot of energy into securing food when it's nearby. They just don't actively hunt it in quite the same way that wolf spiders do. Bumblebees tucked into flowers. That's adorable. Avon, yes, yes. Jumping spiders can see color. Oh, we got frogs. We got frogs in the pond. So when I was an undergrad, I worked in a jumping spider lab, and I was tasked with taking care of the spiders. We had like thousands of spiders, and I had a shelf with a couple hundred of my own. That I would have to go in and feed a couple times a week. But one of the experiments that we were doing was seeing if the color of the prey item mattered to them. There are insects that will be have warning coloration, right? So like think about bees and wasps, you have that very stark contrasting yellow and black. You think about like a stop sign or something to get your attention. It's going to be a bright kind of loud color. And so there are these insects called milkweed bugs that feed on milkweed seeds. And because of that, they're toxic. It's the same reason that monarch caterpillars are toxic, because milkweed contains a chemical compound that is called a cardiac glycoside. And that's a mouthful of term there, but it's essentially really bad for your heart. And so things generally don't feed on things that feed on milkweed. And milkweed bugs are red and black as a warning coloration to be like, hey, you might not want to eat me. But you can feed milkweed bugs sunflower seeds. You can transfer them off of a diet of milkweed to sunflower seeds, which means that they're non-toxic at that point. But they're still red and black. So what we were doing with our jumping spiders is we had colonies of milkweed bugs raised on milkweed, and then also milkweed bugs raised on sunflower seeds. And we would try to feed them in choice tests. Basically, we would put one of each in the container with the spider to see if it would go for one or the other or neither. And it turns out that... Oh, caterpillar on the wall. He's inching. Hell yeah. Good catch, Logan. And we were trying to see if it was a chemical in the caterpillar, or a caterpillar, or... Jesus, caterpillar on the brain, because we're looking at one. If the red and black coloration with the non-toxic bug was enough to prevent the jumping spiders from eating them, or if they were able to somehow sense the chemical in the actual toxic ones. Well, they wouldn't eat either of the red ones, even the non-toxic ones. But then we would paint termites. We had a termite colony that we were raising in the lab as well, that we would paint with different colors, and the other colors didn't seem to bother the jumping spiders as much. They would take blue, they would take purple, they would take green, they would even take pink, which is kind of weird because that's like super close to red. But they would take all these other colors of termites as food, but they wouldn't take the red and black ones. And the lab that I was in also worked on color vision with jumping spiders, because there are some jumping spiders that will be sexually dimorphic in terms of color. And so they're... I forgot the genus. Habernatus. Tortilla, if you're here, can I get a link? Or somebody with a link. Habernatus males will oftentimes have a red mask across their face, and they will use that to signal to females that it's a male ready to mate, and they're able to differentiate between males and females in order to do that. So red is not necessarily a warning coloration for them, but they're able to see red, which is very cool. So there is color vision in jumping spiders, and there's probably color vision in other spiders as well. It's just something that we probably haven't studied as much. Doe, what's up? Topher, what is up? Scrunchy Buncher, you're so right. You're so real for that. Yeah, so we talked about this guy last week. We saw a different caterpillar exactly like this in the grass, and we weren't able to see it do this very well. But we've been tracking it really nicely tonight about it doing its little inchworm thing. You know? I don't know. Doe. I don't know if they can see color. What benefit would it have for them? So caterpillars are obviously a prey item. They're feeding on leaves most of the time. There are groups of caterpillars in Hawaii in the same family, so these same like inchworm dudes that will lean straight back and pretend to be a stick, and then they will actually grab and feed on other insects. So there are predatory caterpillars, which is weird and very cool. But in that instance, they're sensing the things walking up. I don't know that color vision would be super beneficial for caterpillars. But I am also not an insect vision expert. We could know exactly what this caterpillar sees, and I'm not totally sure. So I will, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll write it down here in my notes for the recap and see if I can find anything, and I'll post links in the Discord, in the Chat's Libraries channel, to see if there's anything out there on caterpillar vision. Excellent. Oh, he fell down. Sam, I think that's exactly what he's doing. Checking for leaves and then doesn't find any. So he keeps looking. Color vision, I guess, would be helpful for detecting if it's a stem or a leaf, but it's nighttime, so even if they did have color vision, it probably wouldn't be nearly as good as it would be during the day. Dermal photoreception. Color through their skin. Interesting. Roach, I'll have to look into that. You're probably right, but like I said, I just offhand do not know enough about that to be able to speak super well on it. So, bug collecting with your class on Friday. Yes, I love that you're taking bug class. That's so exciting. My biggest tip is to look on the edges of habitats. So if you're in like a big open field and there's woods next to it, I would start moving yourself towards the edge where that woods meets the field. That's an example if you're going out in like nature. If you're just going around campus, try to find like flowering plants and diversity of habitats. Edge habitats are really neat because some things specifically need that transition zone to live in, but you also have the opportunity to collect the things that are only in the field and only in the woods, but you're just getting them right on the edges of their habitats. So habitat transitions are good for getting a wide diversity of insects, and I think for your class that's probably what you're looking for at this point. You can always message me if you have more specific questions, of course. But yeah, edge habitat is my biggest secret. Because you, like I said, you can get things from both habitats independently, and then there are some things that are like very specific to those transition zones. Yes, that was a crab spider. I'm catching up, y'all. You guys are going tonight. I've got a lot of chat to catch up on. That was, in fact, a crab spider. Donkus, please. Please, why? How many people message me bug questions on a day-to-day basis? It's like at least one. It's definitely at least one a day. Sometimes, it averages out, I would say, to at least one a day. part of my new job does involve people from plant inspectors from around the state sending beetles in to be identified, and so I count that as people asking me bug questions. So it's a lot even at work, but day to day there are people that I haven't talked to since high school, which was a very long time ago for me now. And they're like, "Oh, hey, how's it going?" I'm like, "Okay, we haven't talked in the last uh, you know, 10 plus years. Um, you can just ask me the bug question." Uh, we don't need the lead up of like pretending that you care about what's actually going on. But through like social media, they know that this is what I do. And that's totally fine. Like, it's different for me with people asking for a bug question than it would be for me messaging a friend being like, "Hey, could I get some free like legal advice? You're a lawyer." I don't know. It feels different. I don't charge for identifications unless it's for like a specific research project. And then I can make bank doing identifications, which is fun. But yeah, people message me all the time, and if y'all are in the Discord, I'm not I'm not as active as I have been previously in the bug cord, but there are a lot of other very wise people in the identifications pages that are able to answer your bug questions for you. But it is definitely a lot, and I think that probably comes from being the only bug person that people know. There's a lot of these people, from high school or whatever, that went into tech or went into medicine or things like that. As far as I know, I'm the only one from high school that got into bugs. And so I am the only bug person that most people know, at least, of the people that know me. And so I'm like the only person they could reach out to answer this question. And that becomes a thing. Courtney probably already experiences it. But after taking a bug class and your friends learn that you've taken a bug class, you're going to become the bug friend. And even if you show like a remote interest in it, it happens a lot where there are friends that I know, like through the biology sphere, like birder acquaintances and birder friends of mine, that are like loosely into insects. They like bugs, but they're not like super far down the rabbit hole like I am. Their friends will ask them a question, and then I will get forwarded the question a lot. But yeah, it happens, and I'm happy to do it, because if I wasn't, why would I be doing entomology as a career, right? Identifying bugs and looking at bad pictures that people take of bugs is very, very fun for me, because I get to see stuff from all over the US, all over the world, and sometimes those pictures are very helpful. There was a time when I was living in Arizona, not too long ago, that a birding friend of mine sent me a picture of a beetle and was like, "Hey, what is this?" And I looked at it and I went, "Well, I'll be damned. That's a ground beetle species that I haven't collected in the state yet." And so people sending me locations of these certain things, I'm then able to go and figure out, what their habitat requirements are, and then figure out where these bugs are at. So it's mutually beneficial. That doesn't happen that often, where people find stuff that I've never seen, and then like I'm able to go get it because of that, but it has happened, in fact. So yes, I am always happy to answer bug questions. And I missed somebody's spiders question. Was that J7? Or was it Roche? Somebody said that I missed their spider question. I apologize for that. I'll go back in and look at it. Tip screen 15-20%. That's funny. Femto. That's totally fine. Haven't put them up yet because of procrastination and forgetfulness. That's totally all right. The big thing, though, however, the big thing about Bug ID that I'm not going to name names, but a lot of people in the bug cord forget is that location is super helpful. A country is helpful if you're in the US, a state's even better, but just some general location of where this thing is found. Because there are over 1 million described insect species around the world. A lot of them look very similar, and a lot of things that we have in the US have European counterparts or like European relatives. And so, yeah, did we die? Am I dead? No, I'm good. Okay. Hello, this is Patrick. Oh, it was the camera. Okay. I can never tell. Thank you guys. But yeah, so identification is like, it's tricky because in theory, if you know what something is, it shouldn't matter where it was found, where like you would know what that thing is. But because there are so many, this is a nice frog. Look at him. Sitting so pretty on the rock. Yeah, so it's hard when there's so many species and you don't have a range of where it is. It's like, okay, yeah, the genus Harpalus, which is a ground beetle, which is the group that I work on, there's like over 400 species worldwide, and it's like the European ones look real similar to the American ones. So at least a vague location is very helpful, and it's not a rule or anything that we've instituted in the bug cord. So I mean, I don't get too bent out of shape about it. It's really not that big of a deal because like we're all just on a floating rock in space, whatever. It's nothing matters. But it is very, very helpful to help narrow things down at least if there is a location. Someone asked Cherish Soda, how do I feel about ichneumon? Are you referring to the scientific study of ichneumon wasps, the family Ichneumonidae? It's fine. Ichneumon wasps are really cool. I've got a couple of friends that work on that group. It is not my cup of tea. I try to stay far away from wasps because I don't like looking at wing venation to identify things. So I think it's cool. There's a lot to do in it. I know there's a ton of undescribed species because there are probably more species of wasp on the planet than beetles, but there are over 100,000 more described species of beetles. So if the wasp people ever want to like actually take their crown as being the most diverse order, they gotta get good and start describing things. And so ichneumon is probably a really good place to start with that because there's a ton of different ichneumon wasps because they're parasitoids. Chili beans. Great question. I'm in Connecticut, have a medium-sized yellow orb weaver living on my porch overhang that builds a large web every night, and every morning it's completely gone. Why do they do this? Well, things that they are hunting tend to be out more at night, and during the day there's more of a chance that that big web that they're sitting in is going to attract a predator. Things like birds could fly through it just like not noticing, but also could fly to the web specifically to try to hunt the spider. So a lot of orb weavers will build and take down webs every night because silk is a very expensive material, like energetically, for them to produce. So they will take it down and actually ingest the silk and then basically redistribute it. So they can eat their silk and use it again, which is really cool. But yeah, they'll take it down basically so it doesn't get ruined and it doesn't really give away their position during the day. What are some of the oldest or least changed ancient bugs that we still have? Like, people frequently talk about crocs/sharks changing very little over millions of years. Your oldest examples are going to be silverfish. Silverfish are the first true insects. The first true insects as we currently define insects. Things like springtails used to be considered insects, but now they're proto-insects because it doesn't matter why, but it's because of a little pouch that they have with their mouth parts. Silverfish are monocondylic, which means that their mandibles are only have one attachment point, while a typical insect mandible has two attachment points. So they are the earliest. There's a cricket on the right-hand side, Logan, if you go back a little bit. Maybe one right there in the middle, too. I don't know how much more zoom these cameras have, but... Oh, yeah, we're pretty far away. I don't know if we're going to get better than that. But silverfish are the first insects that are still around. Then after that, the next earliest evolving insects are going to be dragonflies and damselflies, as well as mayflies. So they have we call them direct flight muscles because the wing muscles pull directly on the wings in order to flap them to make them fly. Everything after dragonflies, damselflies, and mayflies, but less well known, have indirect flight muscles. So the wing muscles actually pull on the walls of the exoskeleton rather than directly on the wings themselves. So the muscles pull on the exoskeleton, which helps deform and flex, and that's how they actually flap, and it's much more energy efficient to do it that way than to have direct flight muscles. So dragonflies and damselflies are some of the earliest evolving insects that have wings, but silverfish are the first ones that we have that are still around. Logan, I think that's a poop. Roach, not a dumb question. Never a dumb question. Why have I never seen/found a beetle molt? Do beetles molt? That is a great question. It's not a dumb question. That's great. So all insects molt to shed their exoskeleton in order to grow. They do it in different ways, though, because once an insect has its wings, it is an adult and it will no longer grow anymore. So if you think about like a grasshopper, and you've seen a baby grasshopper, they look just like the adults, but they just don't have fully developed wings yet. And as they grow, their wing pads get bigger, and when they eventually become a full adult, they have fully functional flight wings and fully formed genitalia. Those are called hemimetabolous insects because they go through incomplete metamorphosis. So it's just egg, nymph that looks a lot like the adult, and then adult. Beetles are holometabolists, which means complete metamorphosis insect. So they go through the same sort of life cycle that a butterfly goes through, where there's an egg, there's a larva, there is a pupa, and then there's an adult. Once they get to the adult stage, they no longer shed their skin and they no longer grow anymore. So beetle molts are going to look like the grubs, or the larvae that those beetles come from. So you may have seen them, you just may not have recognized them as beetle molts, because it's going to be the molt or the shed of the larva rather than the molt of the adult beetle. And so that is the same the beetle life cycle, the egg, larva, pupa, adult, is the same thing that butterflies go through, and everybody probably has raised butterflies in like third grade science class or whatever. But yeah, so they go through that complete life cycle, and once a beetle is a beetle, it doesn't get any bigger. It's the same thing for butterflies and flies. So like your fruit flies in your house don't grow up to be like the flies that hang around dog poop in your backyard. Once an insect has its wings, it is an adult and it is that size. So beetles that are super tiny, like a millimeter long, are adults the same way that the Hercules beetle that's like 6 inches long is also an adult. So if you see a beetle and you recognize it as like, yes, this is a beetle, it's never going to molt in that state because it is an adult, it is done growing. Insects don't grow like arachnids do. No, they don't. Arachnids also will have an ultimate molt a lot of the time. So hemimetabolous insects grow like arachnids do. But if it's something with wings, if it has wings, it is an adult, and that's it. But there are things like fleas that notoriously don't have wings, but evolutionarily they did have wings. So fleas also have larvae. So fleas go through the same life cycle that beetles do, and the same life cycle that it halted. Thanks for the resub. 15 months. That's a lot. They go through the same life cycle that butterflies do. So fleas have an egg, a larva, a pupa, and an adult as well, but their adult stage doesn't have wings. But it does look completely different in the same way that like a caterpillar doesn't look anything really like a moth. An immature, a flea larva doesn't look anything like an adult flea. Why are cicada molts so much smaller than a fully grown cicada? Do they have another molt yet? No. So typically when you're finding cicada molts, I'm assuming you're talking about the ones up on the trees. Those are the ultimate molts. So after they come out of those exoskeletons, they'll have their wings and be full adults. The other molts of the cicada, because they do go through other molts before they get to that stage, are going to be happening completely underground. The reason that they're so much smaller is basically the same thing that we've been talking about this whole time, is that every step in an insect's development increases the body size. So I like to think about insects molting, and I guess things molting in general, as like, you buy a medium shirt, and then you go out, you live your life, you put on a couple pounds, you start to grow, get a little bit bigger. And then what you do is you take off the medium shirt, and then you put on the large shirt, and then you have more room to grow and expand. It's the same thing with insects when they shed their skin. Cicadas, when they're doing it up to their adulthood, they're taking off that medium shirt and then growing larger. Their exoskeleton, after they've taken off the medium shirt, so after they've molted, is soft and pliable. So they're able to expand their body a lot more. So their final molt, or the molt that they leave behind, is always going to be smaller than the next stage that comes out of it, because the reason they're quote unquote taking off that size of shirt is because they need more room to grow. So the cicadas are much bigger than their last molt, because that's like the whole idea, right? They're going from that medium shirt into that large shirt. And that's how that goes. We haven't had Eva or Kiwi molt with Alveus yet, but we've seen it with Tortellini and Puppy, you know, with the scorpions, how big they get between each molt. It's not like super gradual, like they'll get to one and then they'll jump like really, really high. They'll get big, they'll stay at that size, and then they'll get even bigger with the next molt. That's a thing in entomology that's called Dyer's Law, which basically just says that like insect body size increases with molt number. So I'll post something about that in the Discord as well. And Dyer is also a really weird dude. I think... yes, he was. Okay, I had to fact check myself on this one before I spread misinformation on the stream. But Dyer, the entomologist that Dyer's Law, this insect growth thing, is named after, was also a really weird dude. He had a secret family, and he was digging tunnels under his house to like try to connect them so he would have a secret passageway from one family to the other. Completely unrelated to his findings in entomology, but I always think that's very funny when talking about him. So I will put something in there about Dyer's Law and the actual science that he did, but I will also put in a link to his messy personal life. All right, let me catch up here. You guys have been talking a lot. Favorite examples of mimicry: rove beetles that look like they have termite on top of them. I think that's a fantastic example. There is a different type of beetle that will hold on to the abdomen of ants, so it looks like the ants have two butts. And I think that's really neat. So I will post a link to that in the Discord as well. Transition of city street lights to LED lights help with migratory insects. Probably. It's hard to test those sorts of things over a long scale, but in general, LED lights are very specific in their wavelength, so they're not as attractive to insects as the old like incandescent bulbs were. So very likely it has, but there's the double edge of that, of like, as cities develop more, there's going to be less available natural areas for the insects to be in. So probably a double-edged sword. Oh my god, Ames. 158 rate. Thank you. Welcome in. Sorry that I missed that. I had a lot of chat that I had to catch up on. Welcome in, Raiders. Yes, thank you. Welcome. See you, J7. Have a good night. Thanks for hanging out. All right, we are back. Great, I've caught up. But yes, I will share. I will share the entomology gossip. He died in like the early 1900s, so it's not like there's it's not fresh gossip. But yes, he was a pretty weird dude. There's also the Kinsey. of like the Kinsey sex scale. He before he got into before he got so the Kinsey scale is the sexual orientation spectrum going from like straight to strictly homosexual. Before he got into human sexuality stuff, he was involved in gall wasp systematics. So he was an entomologist before he got into human sexuality stuff. I don't think he wasn't that weird. I mean, he wasn't digging tunnels, but that has always been like a very interesting career change to me. I think is going from wasp stuff to like human sexuality, and then being very well known in both fields. The sex people probably don't know about the wasp thing, but the wasp people almost certainly know about the sex thing. Gall wasp to human sexuality scale is a big slide, yeah. The the Kinsey scale of sex goes from 0 to 7 or 0 to 6, but the Kinsey career scale probably goes from like 0 to 11, going from wasp systematics on one side to human sexuality on the other. That's very funny to think about. Who else? What other famous people, or like what other people that you guys would know that were entomologists? Chris Pratt, Guardians of the Galaxy, Jurassic World, and everything like that. He's not an entomologist per se, but he does have a bug collection. He does have like framed butterflies and stuff that he collects a lot. Tom Hanks's brother is an entomologist. You guys probably didn't know about that. I won't go to too much detail because he's still alive and he's still around. But yeah, Tom Hanks's brother is an entomologist, which is pretty cool. Who else had big collections? Oh, Rockefeller. Rockefeller is a really nice one, a really big one. Rockefeller of like Rockefeller Plaza in New York City and everything, where they have the Christmas tree and whatnot. Somebody from that family was also very, very into collecting beetles and donated what I can only explain as like a shit ton of money, and his beetle collection with several 100,000 specimens to Harvard. So Harvard has like a little display in their museum of like the Rockefeller beetle collection, which is very cool. I got to work in it once when I was visiting Harvard, looking at some stuff. But that's kind of the neat thing about entomology is like, thankfully, and like I'm very grateful for this every day, that I'm getting to do entomology as a career. But there's a lot of folks that are interested in entomology and are really good at it and still really valuable resources for the scientific community that don't do it full time. Like it's just a hobby, but they are like super into that hobby. I have a friend back in Pennsylvania who's like a high school science teacher, and he gets the summers off because he's a high school teacher. And with that, he just goes around the state and collects moths. His house is like floor to ceiling in all of the walls except for the kitchen and the dining room, like floor to ceiling with shelves to hold insect drawers. And he's phenomenal. I mean, he's a high school teacher, but he's described several new species. He's on a lot of papers. He works with the Pennsylvania Department of Natural Resources to do like moth surveys for the state parks and everything like that. And yeah, like, he doesn't do it professionally, but he's really into it and still like super valuable member of the community. So definitely a cool thing to do on the side. Goth, I've talked about that a little bit before. It really depends where your stuff is coming from. And proving where your stuff comes from is usually pretty difficult. So mods in general, Death's Head mods are one of the big traded ones. There are people that will raise them and farm them specifically for doing art / decor stuff. And frankly, I'm more okay with that than if they were wild collected. It's, you know, it's not fun to think about the fact that those mobs were raised and then like immediately killed for someone to like hang up on the wall and look nice. That's like a whole separate discussion to have, but I would much rather have them farmed for that purpose than people wild collecting and damaging wild populations for the same reasons. There are a lot of things that can be farmed like that. Moths and butterflies in particular are like pretty easy to raise, but a lot of the big beetles take several years as larvae to get to the point where they're adults. And a lot of those are still wild collected, oftentimes without permits, oftentimes illegally shipped over, and then sold on to you. Bats are a huge issue. I know bats are not bugs and like are sort of outside of my scope of expertise here, but there is no legal way to collect bats. So all of that bat taxidermy that they have that is like quote unquote ethically sourced, total BS. There is no ethical source for bats because bat reproduction, they have like 1 or 2 babies at a time, and they do invest pretty heavily in them as parents. So there's no good way to do that because either way you're collecting a bunch of them to, you know, do art stuff with. You are damaging native populations. But with bugs, if this is a way that it happens, again, I'm like more okay with this, where you go out and you collect one adult female moth, but then you get her to lay eggs, and now all of a sudden you're in possession of 200 moth eggs that you then go through the process of feeding and raising and pupating until they become adults. You have taken one moth out of the system, and you've now put 200 into the crafting system, which to me, again, is better than going out and wild collecting 200. But when they do that, they wouldn't sell all 200. They would raise a bunch, and then keep some back, breed them together, and then kind of up their production that way. So there always has to be like at some point, if you trace it back far enough, there is at some point a wild caught ancestor of a lot of things. But with insects, and again, this is with insects specifically, I do not extend this worldview to like vertebrate farming, because again, the investment is a lot different and their reproductive strategies are a lot different. If you can collect like one moth from the wild and then get hundreds, if not thousands, of individuals from that later, I would much rather you do that than go out and try and wild collect all of them. So almost everyone does. Someone said it. Yeah, femto. Ethical doesn't really have a specific definition with taxidermy. People will often say that the insects are like, oh, they're found, but then they live out their natural lives. That's not true. Sorry to burst a bubble. If this is bursting a bubble, that's just not how that happens. Because if an insect lives out its natural life, its wings are going to get tattered. It's going to maybe get eaten by a bird or something like that. So to get those perfect taxidermy display butterflies, those are raised specifically for that reason. Natural specimens are never going to look that nice unless you catch them right after they close, which basically means that they have to be farmed. So if you can talk to and look into your sources and you find somebody that is raising them and has permission to raise them, definitely you can go for it. Again, you guys can always just find me on Discord, shoot me a message. I'd be happy to look at sellers and see if there's anything that I can find out for you. But yeah, in general, the big tropical stuff I tend to stay away from because it is hard to vet who has permits and stuff for that. We have reached the time, but Chair Soda, yes, I do. I just started streaming myself recently. So over on my channel, we look at bugs. We do pre-chat chats on Wednesdays. So like right before the stream, we do some pinning over there. I have a collection personally of about 5,000 to 7,000 specimens that have been identified. So it's a big thing. I do, and I work at a collection that has like 13 million specimens. But very specifically, it is for scientific purposes, not art stuff. So yes, if you do want to see more of that, someone linked my channel, or you can just click on my name or whatever. Still a baby streamer. I've only streamed a couple times, but this community has been incredibly supportive of it, and I thank you all for that. And as always, I thank you all for being here. Like every week, it is excellent for me to be able to do this. I love doing it. I love this community a lot. So thank you all. Thank you, as always, to Logan, our wonderful camera operator for the evening, honing in on some of these fun bugs that we're able to see. Exclamation point bug cord. There, we have a Discord for Alveus bug enjoyers. I will post links and stuff that we've talked about. I will post links regarding things that we've talked about tonight. And there's a backlog of, a bunch of weeks of stuff that we've talked about in the past. So if you're new here, you can go back and see what we've talked about before. We hang out in there during the week. There's people that can do identifications, post your cool bug t-shirts or bug jewelry or whatever. It's fun time. If you join the Discord, the bug cord, we can definitely hang out and chat in there. Thanks all for being here. I shall talk to you next week. Be sure to stay around for rounds where we check on the animals one more time before we all head off to bed. And also, subscribe to the Alveus Clips channel. One of the community members puts a lot of work into that and does very cute clips and stuff of the stream. So go check that out too. All right. Good night, y'all. Talk to you later. See you next week.